I can't believe it's already time for a June wrap up. Like, that is blowing my mind right now. I feel like every month I just talk about how fast these months are going by. I feel like I am making my wrap-up videos and then immediately making another wrap-up video. It's just like, it's compounding at this moment. So I am really excited to bring this video to you guys. We're going to talk about the books that I read in June, which is Pride Month, and then we're going to talk about the books that I want to read in July, because I don't think that it'll take like too much time to get through my June books. I read 6 books in the month of June. I'm pretty sure that all of them were queer, at least in one way or another. The first book that I read, I'm not really sure because I can't really remember. I don't think it was ever mentioned, but the other 5 books are definitely queer, so let's get right on in to this wrap up. So the first book that I have to talk about is Book of Night by Holly Black, and this is her first foray into adult literature, which I didn't really have any emotions about when it was like first announced or released or whatever. I wasn't necessarily anticipating it in any way, but once the reviews started to roll in, once I started to see what everybody was thinking about it, I noticed that like there was a lot of negative reviews, and I was like, okay, now I'm intrigued. Now I want to know, is this book worth it? Am I going to like it? I have only read her, like, the Cruel Prince series, which I think is the Folk of the Air series. That is the only thing I've ever read from Holly Black. So all 3 books, including the little collection of short stories that were like from Carden's point of view, those are the only books from Holly Black that I've ever read. So I was just kind of like, you know what? I am gonna go in with a fresh perspective. I am not going to assume anything or expect anything. I am just going to go into this book knowing that it's adult contemporary fantasy and it's by Holly Black, and that's it. So I finally got the audiobook from my library. I was on a list. It took weeks, and I was really, really excited because I'm like, this book has a pretty bad reputation. I want to see what it's all about. And I read it, and I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars, which honestly is pretty high in comparison to basically everybody else. Like, there are definitely some positive reviews, but I feel like a lot of the people that I'm like friends with or that I like follow on Twitter or on Instagram or whatever, they definitely don't like this book, which I can completely understand. A lot of them have very good reasons for not liking this book. It just wasn't for them. It wasn't what they were expecting. I read a lot of reviews that were just kind of like, I'm giving this book a 1 or 2 stars because I was expecting fairies like her other books, because Holly Black is just like an author who's known for writing about fairies. Like, all of her books are basically about fairies, I think, except for one, which might be about vampires, I'm not really sure. But for the most part, she is like well known as a fairy author. So I can kind of understand where maybe the miscommunication kind of went wrong, and you know, like, I think people were expecting like, okay, this is gonna be like an adult version of The Cruel Prince, which it definitely wasn't. It felt a lot more like Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which I actually had to lower my rating of because I read this book. I ended up liking Book of Night more than I liked Ninth House, and I rated Ninth House 4 out of 5 stars. So it's like, you know what? I think that this book did Ninth House better, and I ended up lowering it to 3 out of 5 stars. So I guess just take that rating with a grain of salt, honestly. I mean, take all of my ratings with a grain of salt. Like, I rate purely on vibes, on experience. My rating system changes periodically. I guess I'm not doing a very good job at like promoting my Goodreads, honestly. Also, I do want to mention that the main character is described as being plus size multiple times throughout the book, which I did not see anybody talk about the entirety since it's been out, which is just so weird to me. I mean, it's not weird, it's obvious, like, I just kind of accept it at this point, like, duh, nobody's going to notice, especially people who are not fat, and I hadn't really seen any reviews from fat readers, so I guess it's not super surprising that they would just leave out the fact that this main character is plus size, but yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I definitely haven't seen it mentioned anywhere else, so very important. I've already been recording for 10 minutes, so I feel like I need to cut it short, and yeah, I did really enjoy this book and I do recommend it. Just go into it without any expectations because I feel like that's where people kind of got tripped up. The next book that I read for the month of June was one that I had been wanting to read for quite a while, and that is If It Makes You Happy by Claire Kahn, and I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I have not stopped thinking about it since I picked it up. As you can see, this book also follows a plus size protagonist, which I had been drawn to when I had first seen this book when it first came out. And I also read Claire Kahn's first book, Let's Talk About Love, and that's also why I wanted to pick this book up anyway. But I've had it for a few years, I think, and I just never picked it up until I saw the audiobook on Hoopla, and I was like, okay, now is the perfect time. It's Pride Month. It just seemed like it was going to be the perfect time to read this book, so I gave it a shot and I absolutely loved it. This has like a great sort of summer setting, so if you're looking for a book that is going to be perfect for the summer, I know we have like a couple of months left of summer, so this would definitely be a perfect book to dive into. Also, this has a really great sort of dynamic between these friends, like this relationship. It's kind of more of a queer platonic relationship, which I've never seen explored in a book, and it really opened my eyes to what like queer platonic relationships were or like are and what they can be. And honestly, I would love to read more books that feature queer platonic relationships, especially like intentionally, because I feel like sometimes, you know, we kind of like headcanon that stuff into books where it's not actually present. So I'd love to read more where it's like intentional representation, but I did really appreciate that in this book, and I thought it was so cute. I felt like some of the plot lines got a little convoluted, like some of them were a little like unnecessary. I felt like this book was trying to do a lot of things at once, and it did some of the plots really well, and other plots were just kind of like didn't get enough attention, I guess, especially the like pageant-y, or like, I guess it's not really a pageant necessarily. Like, she was already crowned queen, like there was no like actual pageant thing. It was kind of more like a prom queen sort of situation, but I felt like that plot line didn't really get the attention it deserved, so it could have just been like tossed aside. I also really appreciated the family dynamics within this book. Like, the main character has a grandmother that she absolutely loves and adores, but like they have a very strained relationship, and I felt like that was really well explored in this book. So give this book a shot. I really enjoyed it. I feel like this is like a huge improvement from her first book. I did love her first book. I thought it was fantastic, but this one I think is definitely better, and I cannot wait to read more from Claire Kahn. So yeah, gonna be one of the authors that like I just immediately read from now on. I also want to talk about one of the books that I DNF'd this month, and that is Tell Me How You Really Feel by Amina May Safi, which just broke my heart, the fact that I had to DNF this book. There wasn't really anything problematic or like, you know, bad about this book. It really just is a taste level thing for me. This book just grated on my soul, on my brain, everything. It just was not for me, and that was so unfortunate. Like, the two main characters I just found to be so irritating, and I could not get past the first few chapters. I was really bummed because like this cover is gorgeous. Like, I've been obsessed with this cover for so long, and I was just bummed that like it just did not work for me. So just wanted to quickly mention that because I will be getting rid of this book, and you'll probably see it on Pango Books if you follow me over there. The next book that I read in the month of June was Never Been Kissed by Timothy Janofsky, and I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. This book was one that I felt very middle of the road about. Like, I didn't have any sort of strong opinion about this book. I did find it to be really cute and very charming, It's about this like college-aged boy. I think he just graduated from college, and every summer he goes to work at this drive-in movie theater. And this summer is a little bit different because one of the boys from his past is back in his life and is also working at this drive-in, and they kind of have a complicated relationship. And this book also kind of tries to do the "To All the Boys I've Loved Before" thing, where the main character has these crushes on these guys and he sends out emails to them while he's drunk about like how much he liked them in the past and like his crushes on them, etc. So it does kind of try to do the "To All the Boys I Loved Before" thing, which is fine. I didn't feel like it was necessarily executed very well. It seemed more like a plot device than an actual like plot, if that makes any sense. It seemed more of just like an excuse to have this guy know about the main character's feelings rather than having it be like an overarching plot. Because I feel like in Jenny Han's book, it's like an integral part of the plot, whereas in this book it just kind of is something that happens in the beginning and doesn't have any like sort of consequences towards the end. But I will say that I did think this book was super cute. I loved that the main character was really obsessed with like old Hollywood movies. I really loved that it was set at a drive-in. I thought that was super cute. This is kind of like another like really great summer read, so I think really any of these are perfect for the summer. I listened to the audiobook and I thought that was really well done. So yeah, I feel like this isn't really a book that I've seen very many people read, so it might be interesting to see other people's thoughts on this book. The next book was one of my favorites from this month, honestly, and that was Book Boyfriend by Chris Ripper. I've actually read a Chris Ripper book earlier this year, and I did really enjoy that one as well. I think it was called The Hate Project, but this one I think personally is so good. So much fun. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't perfect, but I had a really fun time reading it. And honestly, it kind of gives me like really big You've Got Mail like aesthetic, or really just like Nora Ephron in general aesthetic, honestly. It doesn't have like a You've Got Mail plotline or anything, but it does definitely feel like it could be a Nora Ephron movie. Basically, it's about this guy and he has always been in love with his best friend, like absolutely head over heels in love with him, never has told him, has just kind of been pining over him for years, and he ends up using that as inspiration for a book that he writes. And it's like a romance book. It's super cute, and it ends up like blowing up, doing super well. And he isn't telling his best friend about it. He's not telling anybody about like the fact that he wrote this book. He's using a pseudonym and everything, so his best friend absolutely loves this book and has no idea that the main character wrote it. It was a really interesting premise. I had a really fun time listening to this audiobook. I was obsessed. Like, I could not put it down. It was fantastic. And I definitely want to read more from Chris Ripper. I'd be very intrigued to see what else he's written, so I'll definitely have to check some of that out and let you guys know how that goes. But yeah, it was definitely a very cute book, and I highly recommend it. The second to last book that I read for this month was Tin Man by Sarah Winman, and this book was like super short, but it packed a seriously huge punch. I think I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. It was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. I cannot gush enough about this book. It was so beautifully written. It was so heartbreaking. It basically follows these two boys from when they meet as children until one of them ends up passing away. It's just about friendship and love and the different kinds of love that you experience in life, and having to go off on your own and become your own person. And it also has a lot to do with the AIDS epidemic. Even just talking about it now, it like this book really got me, so just be prepared. It's beautifully written, but it will make you cry, like sobbing, like just sobbing. This is definitely a book that I wish that I owned physically, because I would love to read it like as a physical book and really truly absorb it. This was such a beautiful book, and I'm so glad I ended up reading it. I probably would never have read it if not for this other video that I'm filming. But yeah, this book just destroyed me in such a beautiful, beautiful way, and I highly recommend it. Like, if you're gonna read any of these books, have it be Tin Man. It was so good. And the last book that I read in the month of June was Subtweet by Vivek Shraya. And I gave this book, I think, a 3 out of 5 stars. It was pretty good. It was much better than I was expecting for it to be, especially from reading some of the other reviews. I was like, I might not like this book, but we're gonna give it a shot because I love the cover. And then, like, there was another part of me that was like, you might really love this book because it is about music. And it's also a lot about, like, Twitter culture and subtweeting, all of that kind of mess. And I was like, you know what, it really could go either way for me. And it ended up being very middle of the road. There were parts about it that I really enjoyed, and then there were a few parts that I was just like, I don't know. Basically, it follows these two musicians. One of them is like a cover artist, and the other makes their own original music. The cover artist ends up covering one of the original artist's songs, and it blows up. It becomes like this viral hit. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves this cover. And there's definitely a lot of tension, like weird tension between these two people. They meet, they become sort of kind of frenemies in a way, and really the whole conflict within this book is really happening through subtweets that are, you know, that each other are putting out about the other. And I don't know how I felt about the execution of this book. I felt like it was, I guess what I really want to say is that everybody's experience on Twitter is a little bit different, right? Everybody's experience with social media is a little bit different. And something I kind of appreciated about this book was that I felt like it wasn't putting out this blanket statement of all social media is bad 100% of the time, which I feel like books like this can kind of end up doing, where it's like, social media is evil, it's so bad. But I think it really focuses on the fact that, like, it is what you make of it. It is how, you know, everybody's experience with social media is going to be very different, especially with, like, who you are as a person, how you talk through conflict, how you experience stuff, and, like, how you take other people's words, you know, our internal biases and stuff like that. But there were also moments where I felt like it was kind of doing the, what I like to call, like, the ABCs of feminism or the ABCs of racism, or, you know, like that kind of stuff, which I have critiqued other books in the past for doing, where I feel like they are kind of just really oversimplifying things, but also being overzealous about the simplifications. In my review for Goodreads, which is like just like one long paragraph, I didn't really feel like, you know, doing sort of any editing or structuring of this review. A lot of my reviews nowadays are just kind of like a few sentences about what I thought of the book. Anyway, I basically said the experience of reading this book felt like reading Twitter threads from a well-meaning but ultimately new and overzealous activist, which I feel like is an entire summary of this book. Especially in the first couple of chapters, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm kind of back in like 2015 Tumblr. It's fine. Not really somewhere where I want to go back to, but like, I guess. But another issue that I had specifically with like the actual writing within this book was that I felt like so many sections of it were just so confusing. Like, I had no idea what was going on. There were definitely moments where it was hard to follow the narrative and even the characters, and like who was saying what, who was mad at who, what was going on between everybody. It was a little hard to follow, which ultimately hindered the book a lot and kind of kept it from being as good as it could have been, because I felt like if some of the things that had gone awry had been fixed, this could have been like a 4 or maybe even 5-star book. But so many aspects of this book felt very clumsy, very much like lacking direction, and it just ended up hurting the book in the end. And while I liked a lot of it, there were just like too many parts of it that I didn't like, and that's why I ended up getting a 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, so those are all the books that I read in June. Let's talk about the books that I'm going to read in July, or at least the books that I would, you know, in the best of worlds, I would love to read. So the first book that I have on this list is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. And mainly the reason that I want to read this book is because I've been seeing a lot of critiques about Ottessa Moshfegh as an author, as a person, and I have been really intrigued to read this book for a very long time, and so I felt like, you know what, now or never. Now or never. Let's read this book, let's see what I think about it. A lot of the critiques that I've been seeing about her books, especially this one, is the blatant and overusage of fat phobia in order to make her characters unlikable, which I don't know how I necessarily feel about that. I'm of two minds when it comes to that topic. And I feel like that's definitely a topic that we could save for another video. I don't want to like get too deep into that, especially since I've taken so long talking about like Book of Night and all that other kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to read this. I still hope that I enjoy it. I still hope that, you know, maybe by some miracle I will absolutely love Ottessa Moshfegh and it'll be great. It'll be a great time. So yeah, I'm very intrigued. This is definitely another case of like the negative reviews are making me want to read it even more, so we're ready for that. The next book is one that I mentioned in my last video, and that is The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes by Zio Axelrod. This book, a chunker. She's thick. Look at that. Crazy. But I'm really excited to read this book. I do believe that this is a romance, which, if you know me, this is a little thick for a romance, but we're gonna give it a chance. We're gonna give it a shot. I feel like this is gonna be perfect for summer, so I'm really excited to read it, and I'm gonna give it a chance, so I'll let you know how I feel about it. Another one I think that I mentioned in my last video, Happy Hour by Marlo Granados. And I'm really excited to read this book. It's a lot shorter than the other one. It's way less than 300 pages, which, you know, that's what I like to see. I'm so excited to read this book. I've heard so many great things about it. I've heard that it's a super happy, super light, nice, summery read, and that makes me want to read it even more. So I'm really excited about this. It's set in New York. It follows these two Canadian best friends, and they're just trying to make it in New York, I think during the summer, so that'll be a lot of fun. The next book is actually a nonfiction book. I believe it's semi, kind of like a memoir, kind of like a collection of short stories that are nonfiction, but I bought this book I think last year from my local indie bookstore, and this author is also technically, I guess, local. She goes to the college that's in my city. The book is If You Lived Here You'd Be Famous by Now by Via Bleidner, and this is true stories from Calabasas, which I don't live in Calabasas, but I guess the author did at some point, and I'm really excited to read this. I hope that it has some like funny little stories. I really want a book that is just very lighthearted, very like unserious, and I'm hoping that this is the kind of book for me. So I'm really excited to read it. I'll let you guys know how it goes. But yeah, I love this cover. I don't know, I love like a big text with just like a little like thing, you know, very simple, very just of the moment, I guess. But yeah, very excited to read this one. The next book that I want to read in July is actually a book that I am currently reading, and that is The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. I am currently, I think I want to say like 50 pages in, 52, and I have been really enjoying this book. I need to read it. I need to pick it back up. It's definitely giving me very much Emily Henry, very much Beach Read, very much Book Lovers, which, you know, I'm not mad about. If I like something, I typically tend to read a few other books that are very similar. and that's fine with me. I just read them until I get tired of them. But so far, I am absolutely loving the writing of this book. I'm loving the characters. I'm loving the dynamic. I'm loving the fact that like these two people that have this very complicated relationship have to come back together and write one more book. That just like is everything that I've ever wanted in a book. I love that idea. So yeah, I'm super excited to read this book and to finish it, and we're gonna love it, I already know. And the last book is another one that I really need to finish, and that is Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie. I am currently 106 pages into this book. I know that I'm loving it. I know I'm loving it. That's not a question. I don't even know why I put this book down, but I did, and I have not come back to it in a few months, so I definitely need to finish this book because I know I was loving it, and I need to see what happens next. So I'm super excited. We're gonna finish it. These are the two books that I really need to finish soon, so we can get those crossed off of the list. But yeah, definitely really excited about this TBR for July. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I also have a lot of audiobooks. I guess I can go through those really quickly. Funny enough, I didn't really use any of the borrows that I had for June. So on June 30th at like 11:30 at night, I just borrowed like 10 books, 9 or 10 books. And so the one that I'm currently reading right now, I'm almost halfway through it. It's Behind the Scenes by Christina C. Jones. This book was really interesting and fun in like the first maybe 30% of the book, but at the moment it's kind of dragging a little. It feels a little long, and there's definitely a few scenes that I feel like are completely unnecessary. They're just really like filler chapters. So I'm kind of like lukewarm on this book at the moment, but I will say that it is very steamy, very steamy, and that's a lot of fun. So it's all good. It's still a fun read. It's just like not blowing my mind like it was in the beginning. The other book that I borrowed is An Unexpected Kind of Love by Hayden Stone, a queer book, fun. The next one is Finlay Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano. I've heard a lot of good things about this book. The next one is Last True Poets of the Sea by Julia Drake. Another one that I've heard good things about. The Wonders by Elena Meadle. I thought it was Mendel for a second. I haven't heard anything about that book, but it looks really interesting. I also got You'd Be Mine by Erin Hahn. I also have The Messy Lives of Book People by Phaedra Patrick. A Caribbean Heiress in Paris. I love that title. It's so fun. And then Perfect on Paper by Sophie Gonzalez, which I actually read a Sophie Gonzalez book earlier this year and loved it. It was about a boy band. It was so much fun, and I've heard really good things about Perfect on Paper, so I'm super excited to read it. Yeah, it's a lot of books for July. I think that's probably like what, 15, 16 books. Who knows if we'll get through all of them, but you know, it's gonna be a fun ride either way. You are all gonna come along with me. I definitely want to do more vlogs this month. I feel like I have been really slacking on the vlogs, so let me know if you want to see some of those from me down below in the comments. Also, if you got this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. Let's go ahead and leave a strawberry emoji in the comments. I was gonna go with a pineapple, but I felt like that was too millennial of me. Let's go with a strawberry. We're loving strawberries at the moment. They are like the fruit of the year, so let's go with that. And I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, TikTok, Storygraph. All of the links are going to be down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye! Ooh, I thought it'd be me and you.